political economy of the Middle East Research and Development. Good morning to you, Dr. Merrvat.
Good morning to you, Nidine.
And we start off from Al-Akhbar, and we read one of its main banners: the administrative judiciary rejects the appeals and the rerun of the parliamentary elections to go. Today, the start of the electoral silence ahead of the rerun of the first phase of the elections of the House of Representatives. The official spokesman says a meeting to study the verdict of a rerun of Al Ramel constituencies, and the Alexandria Administrative Court looks into 5 lawsuits filed by a number of parliamentary candidates demanding the annulment of the results of this recently concluded first phase of the elections. Still with the same issue, from Al Masri Al-Yawm we read: the Noor party candidate in North Sinai killed. An officer and 2 conscripts fall martyrs and 10 others wounded in a blast that targeted an armored vehicle and the firing of a shell in Al Arish, and arresting a Takfiri element who tried to kill a policeman in Gharbeya. And for the first time in the history of elections, a Coptic rerun of the seat of Malawi. And Dr. Merrvat, how do you comment on the parliamentary elections, the first phase of the parliamentary elections, and what are your expectations for the rerun?
Well, let me tell you one thing. First of all, people have been saying that not as expected, many have went to cast their vote. Mm-hmm. And some said it's a silent, kind of being against what is going on in the country made people like that. Mm-hmm. And they brought people who said that they haven't seen any recognizable or really a strong change in whatever was going on prior to this election. Mm-hmm. In addition, the media played a very significant role into introducing those who are running for as candidates for mm-hmm. each governorate. Some did not even recognize mm-hmm. who is representing mm-hmm. them.
A lot of people said that they didn't know the candidates and they didn't know who to select.
Not just this, mm-hmm. even the parties, as mm-hmm. we said last time mm-hmm. on this program, mm-hmm. if you remember, that the parties, the political parties in Egypt mm-hmm. should really take another phase and should really...
How do you assess the role of the political parties so far in the first phase?
Look, it has nothing to do with the phases of mm-hmm. the elections mm-hmm. as much as it has to do with how they represent themselves to the people. Mm-hmm. What programs do they have? Mm-hmm. If you look at the parties separately, and this agglomeration of or merging mm-hmm. of these parties into fronts was not even recognized by the people.
Right.
And we are always identifying ourselves with the people, not the party. Mm-hmm. And it's a disaster, to be honest, mm-hmm. mm-hmm. because a party should have a program.
Right.
And no one really had a program that is unique mm-hmm. and makes it unique in itself. Mm-hmm. They all the name of Egypt, Masr,
right.
in their name, mm-hmm. just to get people attracted to go and vote for them. And this is exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. Not for their program, mm-hmm. not for what they are going to do to the people. Mm-hmm. It's no longer favors. Right. We want a future.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. We want social justice. Mm-hmm. We want an eye to be shed on the poor. Mm-hmm. We don't have that.
We don't have that.
In addition, mm-hmm. these people also did not go because, or those who went really, let me concentrate on those. Mm-hmm. Why did we go and vote? Mm-hmm. Because we don't want political Islam mm-hmm. again. Mm-hmm. Because we've had a very harsh lesson with the Brotherhood.
Of course. Yeah. What's your expectation for the second phase of the elections?
Maybe the handling of the media would be different. Mm-hmm. And it should have been different. Mm-hmm. Tell me, where from would the various those who are eligible for elections, where would they get their idea of who is going to represent them? Mm-hmm. okay, if the candidates as well, they really go into the governorates or into the small villages, no, as if they are non-existent.
Right.
Who will
This is true.
represent them? Isn't it their representative, or is it representative to cities? Okay, they concentrated on cities,
This is
not
true.
on the real village, not on the workers and peasants. Remember that
And the
this,
peripheral area.
this exactly peripheral areas as well. And remember, we don't have the 50% for workers and peasants
It's
anymore.
true. It's true.
So are we going to go on like that with political parties that appear to the public to be a puppet, doing nothing? They want just, you know, to go to the parliament, get money, and have, you know, this immunity against anything. And they say because we do. No, they don't.
As you just mentioned, we don't have workers and these segments and
Yes.
farmers, but what do you expect for the representation of women and youth in the next parliament?
Well, you know, women have really stressed their position and really asserted their position in the society. Remember, they were the driving force for June 30th. Even the president recognized the role of women. But the youth, we still haven't reached the youth, and it's very bad, because the youth is your future. The youth constitutes something like 60% of our society.
How can we reach the youth?
Well, it's through education. It's through socialization process that should have taken place a very long time ago. You know, your identification with the government, your identification with your country makes you keen to work, makes you keen to go for elections, because it is for the best of my country. This important element should be in our curriculum for
It's true.
education.
It's
You know,
true.
whether it be in the preliminary or later in universities.
No. And this way we go back to the importance of
Sure.
education and changing our curriculums. And back to Al-Akhbar, and we read from page 3, the ministers of investment, tourism and local development say before the Egyptian International Economic Conference in Matruh, enhancing investment in the governorates and apply the one-window system, presenting projects worth £200 billion before the conference and signing the contracts of 21 tourism projects. Still with the same issue, and from Al-Masri on page 5, we read, inaugurating the first Egyptian International Economic Conference for investing in Matruh in the attendance of 4 ministers. Abu Zaid says that the conference is a developmental revolution, £28 billion worth of investments in the Siwa Oasis, and the one window to promote investments. And Governor of Matruh, Ali Abu Zaid, says 2 tourism projects will be signed to develop the Agiba Plateau and the area of Ramel. He adds that a number of industrial and agricultural projects south of Matruh city and in the Alamein area will be linked. Dr. Merrvat, how do you see the significance of this economic conference which kicked off yesterday in the governorate of Marsa Matruh?
I'm really very happy with what is going on in Marsa Matruh. Why? Because it's well planned. It's bringing United Arab Emirates and Southern Korea into the picture. And both are serious investors, if you know.
Of course.
And they are going to manage, which is the bot. You manage and wait for the return.
Right.
You don't charge us anything. And it's a very good, you know, prepared project. You have now the storage system, you have water that would go to these places, and you have Siwa as well.
Right.
It's going to attract tourists.
Of course.
And that's what
these areas were neglected.
I heard him yesterday.
These areas were
Abu Zaid.
neglected, right.
Really, he is marvelous, because we have been saying what? Prepare yourselves well for a conference. Not go just haphazardly into a conference and then say, oh, it did not pay for what we did. Of course it will not pay. Okay, but if you have it well prepared, as is the case in this, and you have you know, stations, electrical power stations that are going to be erected with the help of the Koreans. And we have another one in Adaba with the Russians. So there is a developmental process going on, okay? And this implies that we are, you know, increasing the investment in Egypt, which will help our pound, which has gone to the floor.
Of course.
Okay, with wrong policies that have been adopted by not just the governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, but I mean,
you just mentioned this monetary policy. How would you
Yes.
comment on the previous monetary policy, and how do you expect the change?
the significance of the failure of the governor of the Central Bank of Egypt is the limitation of depositing and of withdrawing. The amount of the dollar is very, you know, limited. It's only limited to a certain sum of money. So that's why people who wanted to invest went where? Into, you know, private exchange companies. And these are owned by whom? By the brotherhoods. Okay? So they have been gathering all...
As we've seen the case with Hassan Malik.
Exactly. And they have been operating under the eye of the governor, and still he tried to do something, but all what he did was not really helping the economy. And in addition to that, we the economic group should really determine, are we going to adopt a depreciative monetary policy or an appreciative monetary policy? Because
coordination has to take place between the ministers of Minister of Economy, Minister of Investment.
Exactly. The interest on the dollar. If you raise it slightly, then the rest of the world, you could attract investment in foreign currency.
Right.
Okay. And the re-evaluation of the problem with the withdrawal of the government of money or borrowing, the borrowings that the government has done all these years and paying too much for investment banks. Why didn't the government borrow from the central bank with an interest rate that is reasonable?
Right.
The people say that because it borrowed from private banks, what happened? You pay triple and 4 times, and it is an accumulative interest.
Right. We're looking forward, of course, to some changes in the monetary policy.
Yes.
And back to Al-Akhbar, and we read from its front page, an Egyptian-Russian agreement to reach a peaceful settlement for the Syrian crisis. Moscow asked Assad to carry out presidential and parliamentary elections and announces its support for the Free Army. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the Kremlin wants Syria to prepare for parliamentary and presidential elections as Moscow intensifies its drive to convert its increased clout with Damascus into a political settlement. And now, dear viewers, we go to this report and we'll be right back.
Saudi King Salman and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry on Saturday called for greater international efforts to restore Syria without President Bashar al-Assad at its helm. U.S. State Department spokesman John Kirby said that the two countries backed the aim of a unified and stable country for all Syrians. He added that both sides noted the importance of mobilizing the international community to support this goal and reiterated the need for a transition away from Assad. Kirby said that the two sides pledged to continue and intensify support to the moderate Syrian opposition while the political track is being pursued. Kerry first went into a meeting with Foreign Minister Adel Jubair before heading out to the King's Country residence. Washington and Riyadh are part of a US-led coalition that last year launched an air campaign targeting the Daesh militants who control parts of territory in Syria and neighboring Iraq. The Saudis' talks follow a meeting on Friday in Vienna between Kerry and the foreign ministers of Russia, Turkey and Saudi Arabia on ways to end the Syria conflict. However, the Vienna talks failed to make any breakthrough, and Kerry said at the time he hoped to reconvene another broader meeting on Syria as early as October 30th. Russia launched its own campaign on September 30 in response to a request from the mosques.
Welcome back. Dr. Merrvat, how do you expect the effect of holding elections in Syria?
Well, I must say one thing. To us, it is very important to keep the system, to keep a country intact, not to have a divided Syria. We want to keep the system regardless of who is running the system, mind you. Assad is not that much hated as it is said in our media or in the media elsewhere, especially guided by the United States. And sometimes I really fail to understand the position of Saudi Arabia. Why do they want to help the Americans to really enforce a change and to put somebody like the Jabhat al-Nusra, okay, as to run the country? Though we all know that Jabhat al-Nusra is now nothing but brotherhoods, okay. The Syrians are not as we get it in our media. Not all of the people are against Syria. Okay, the Syrian President Assad, okay, and the intervention of Moscow was really highly needed because the army that has been really bearing all of this is now becoming weak, and it was losing.
Right.
Right.
And the last item we chose comes from Al Akhbar last page, and we read more regional news. Violence escalates after 140 Palestinians were injured in the West Bank and Gaza, and Abbas highlights to U.S. carry in Amman the importance of preserving the status of Al-Aqsa Mosque. The United States sketches out steps, including 24-hour video surveillance endorsed by Israel and Jordan, that it hopes will ease tensions over a Jerusalem site holy to Muslims after weeks of... And now we go to this report, and we'll be right back.
The United States on Saturday proposed steps including 24-hour video surveillance to end weeks of violence over an occupied Jerusalem site holy to Muslims. Speaking in Amman after meeting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Jordan's King Abdullah, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that Israel had embraced an excellent suggestion by the king, who is of this site within Jerusalem's walled old city, for round-the-clock monitoring. Kerry added that Israel had also given assurances it had no intention of changing the status quo at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, that is the third holiest site in Islam. Muslims refer to the site as the Noble Sanctuary or Al-Haram al-Sharif. In a statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel recognized the importance of the site and reaffirms its commitment to upholding unchanged the status quo of the site in word and in practice. He echoed Kerry's statement that Israel would enforce its long-standing policy under which Muslims may pray at the site. However, Jews may only visit but not pray, and that Israel had no intention of dividing up the... Kerry said that Israeli and Jordanian officials would meet soon to work out the details of the video monitoring.
Welcome back. Dr. Merrvat, your quick comment on the escalation of violence, the continuous escalation of violence in Palestine. And
Mahmoud Abbas is really doing his very best. First, and he succeeded, as you saw, when they raised the flag of Palestine.
Of Political Economy of the Middle East Research and Development. Many thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure having you.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Nidhi.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, with this of our daily press review, stay tuned. We'll be back to resume our breakfast room.